The question before Americans is now very clear. Do you want more of the same? Trump and Biden are both about 80 years old. Trump and Biden both lack a vision for our country's future because both are consumed by the past, by investigations, by vendettas, by grievances. America deserves better.
That was Nikki Haley delivering a pretty compelling closing argument after coming in third in Iowa. Despite Trump's large lead, there is still a fever, despite Trump's large lead there and nationally, there is still this fever dream among some Republicans that Nikki Haley can somehow defeat Trump and then take on Biden. A new CBS YouGov poll conducted before the Iowa caucuses, which I present to you with the caveat that polls this far out are just a snapshot and not necessarily meaningful. However, it is data, and it does show that if a head-to-head matchup were held today, Haley would win the general election by 8 points, 53% to 45%, faring better than both Trump and Ron DeSantis, who also lead Biden, but by smaller margins that are within the poll's margin of error. Joining me now is Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. She is a co-chair of President Biden's reelection campaign. Governor, thank you so much for being here. Let me just ask you the direct question. How concerned is the Biden White House that by some, miracle they are facing Nikki Haley rather than Donald Trump?
Well, listen, I think the results last night out of Iowa tell us what we've all kind of suspected, is that Donald Trump still has a grip on the Republican Party. He and his MAGA extremists are the standard bearers for today's Republican Party. And it's not reflective of who we are as a nation. It's not reflective of where we need to be headed as a country as we think about our standing globally. President Biden, on the other hand, gave a speech, near Valley Forge and Charleston, talking about the real threat to American democracy and fundamental freedoms, which have been under attack, especially these last few years as you think about reproductive rights. And so I do think that it's always going to be a competitive race, especially in a state like mine. But at the end of the day, voters are smart. They're going to vote for the person that really is waking up in the morning thinking about them and working tirelessly to make their lives better. And there's no question in my mind that candidate is Joe Biden.
So I'm glad that you mentioned reproductive rights. I mean, that is an issue that I think most Democrats expect to galvanize much of the base. But there is now an issue that is competing, that is also galvanizing people who are in the Democratic base, just not in the direction of Joe Biden. I want to play Katie Tur, our great reporter, was in Manchester, New Hampshire yesterday, and she interviewed a liberal voter. And I want you to listen to what she said about Nikki Haley versus President Biden.
Would you consider Haley?
Yes.
You would?
Yeah.
Even though you're heavily liberal?
Yes.
Why?
Because I think both sides have had their fill of old white men, and it's time for younger, more new blood to come in.
If it's Haley versus Biden, who would you vote for?
Haley.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, mostly over his politics with Israel right now. Yeah.
Would her politics be much different?
I think that she's more willing to listen and negotiate than what Biden's doing right now.
Okay, now, but just as a fact check for our audience, before I have you respond to that, let me play Nikki Haley's actual beliefs about Gaza and Israel. Here they are.
I'm assuming the position, therefore, is America should not take them either.
Absolutely not. They should go to Hamas-loving countries, Iraq, Qatar, Turkey, those three countries, they can go to that. But it's very telling that here you've got the people in Gaza that Egypt doesn't even want them. That none of those countries want them. You know why? Because they don't know which ones are Hamas and which ones aren't. Why should anybody else take them if that's the case? And so it is not Israel's problem. It's not America's problem.
Ouch. Okay, so with that set up, there is still a perception that there are a lot of voters, young voters and some not so young, who would prefer a candidate who they see as more compassionate about Palestinians. And clearly that ain't Nikki Haley, but some people think it might be. There is the national director of the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee. His name is Abed Ayoub. He tweeted that President Biden is coming to your state, to Michigan, to meet with Arab American voters. He's going to travel there, but there's a problem. Many are rejecting the invite to meet. The reality is starting to set in for many in our community that they won't forget about the genocide. Does President Biden have a Gaza problem?
So here's what I know. Coming from a state that is proud to have a robust Arab American population and a robust Jewish population, people came to Michigan from around the world for a good paying job at Ford Motor Company or GM. And that's why we've got this wonderful diversity. These communities have lived as neighbors in harmony for decades. People are hurting in both communities. There is no question about that. And as we see younger voters engaging and speaking up about what they think the right policy should be, we know that voters are not a monolith. They're not one issue voters. They care about making sure that we've got a president who is leading, who is rolling up their sleeves, who is worried about both communities and trying to find a solution here, as opposed to the alternative, which is going to be someone who once promoted a Muslim ban. These voters, too, many young voters care about climate change and reproductive rights and LGBTQ rights and being able to afford a house when they graduate from college. And that's why I'm excited about barnstorming the state this weekend to talk about the anniversary of Roe and what's really at stake in this upcoming election, because there are a lot of issues here. And that's why I think this work is so important. And that's why telling people what our president has been able to accomplish is going to be crucial, too, as we get closer to next year, to the election later this year.
Absolutely. And, you know, the president has to try to tell his story. But on this specific issue, are you concerned that Michigan could be in play? Because there is a lot of anecdotal reporting that Arab American voters are saying they're going to stay home. And Dearborn, as you said, it could flip the state.
Yeah. Of course I'm concerned, Joy. I think I'm always concerned about what way Michigan's going to fall in a national election. We often decide the path to the White House goes right through this state.
Yes, it does.
And this is a very important block of voters, but they're also sophisticated voters who I think are going to really look at what the alternatives are. And at this point, an assumption about where one candidate may be versus what we know the truth to be, that will all get fleshed out and much clearer in people's minds as we get closer to the election.
Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and very able spokesperson for the Biden campaign and a very popular governor. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.